Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Enchanted Cottage Fireside Poetry Reading. I'm so happy that you all are here right now, and I get to spend this time with you, sharing some of my favorite poems from my new book. I first wanted to share a little bit about the Enchanted Cottage. It was released last month on December 15th. You can purchase it now, either a signed copy from my website or on Amazon. I put a link in the description of this video. I also wanted to shout out some of the amazing people who helped bring this book to life. The beautiful cover of the book was illustrated by artist and author Felipe Jimenez Sapiola. He has an incredible children's book, The Moon and the Bear, which is in English and Spanish. You can find him and his book on Instagram. I also put his username in the description of this video. I also want to shout out another artist who worked on the Enchanted Cottage, who also happens to be my amazing sister, Annalise Lucero. She illustrated the gorgeous chapter pages that you will see throughout the reading. I know she's here right now, so I just want to say thank you and I love you. Also, the fun blueprint of the cottage was created by my dad, Pat Arguelles. And who knows, maybe one day someone will build this cottage. Lastly, I want to shout out my amazing husband and editor, Dylan Radford. He supports my writing journey so much, and he's actually on dad duty this evening, and I just want to give him a huge thank you and say I love you. Now, The Enchanted Cottage is a book I am very proud of. It was written over the last several years of my life. Themes you'll find in this book are about family, motherhood, romance, intimacy, grief, friendship, and the magic in everyday moments. For this evening, I have selected several poems from each chapter to read with you all. If you have the book, go ahead and grab it, but if not, that's okay. I'll also have the poems on the screen for you. For the next 50 minutes or so, I'll be reading all the poem selections and giving some background about each poem, such as inspiration, meanings. After that, I'll be opening it up for any questions. But throughout the reading, please feel free to add any comments or questions in the comment section because I'll be able to go back and I can address them during the Q&A. So I want to start off by reading the book's welcome letter that you can find in the preface. When I was coming up with the concept of the Enchanted Cottage, I had this idea in my mind that me and my family were going to like an Airbnb and this cozy cottage in the middle of the forest, and to find some rest, love on one another, and find the magic in our lives again. And so I thought it would be so fun to have this little letter waiting for us, like, welcome to the cottage, and something that was just kind of light and silly. So I want to start off by reading that for you all. Dear guests, welcome to the Enchanted Cottage. We've been expecting you. Yes, the walls have already whispered your arrival. This is a place where time slows, hearts mend, and even the smallest moments shimmer with wonder. Let the forest hum lull you, the hearth's warmth ease your burdens, and every room invite you to pause, reflect, or dream. There are no rules in this place, only gentle invitations. Wander through each door, follow the winding paths, or simply curl up by the fire and let yourself be. Whether you come to laugh, cry, rest, or hope, this cottage embraces it all, just as you are. May you find peace in the stillness, joy in the quiet moments, and perhaps a little magic along the way. Welcome home. With warmth and enchantment, the cottage. Okay, now we enter the cottage, and the first room that we'll be in is chapter 1, the hearth. The hearth is a family room, a place that people will gather and sort of hang out, and I find that people often hang out in kitchens and living rooms. So this is sort of a combo of both in my head. This chapter is about family bonding, staying in the present moment, and finding the magic in the little things. The first poem I want to read is titled Right Now on page 10. All right, this poem, it's about being in the present moment. And I'm not going to give any more details because it kind of speaks for itself. Right now. There is only right now, and I don't want to miss it. I refuse to blunder the summer sunset casting marvels in your eyes, or the way you just looked at me, a smile blooming on your lips. I refuse to miss our toes dancing to the song of the wind and the seamless feel of your hand in mine. I won't dwell in yesterday's grief or be shadowed by tomorrow's doubt. I want to be here with you right now. I'm sorry for that noise that you heard. That's actually my cat's like food alarm. So yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So the next poem that we have is Lucky Star on page 13. Let's see. Okay. All right. And Lucky Star is a poem that was inspired by my daughter's obsession with Madonna's song Lucky Star. She always asks to play it anytime we're listening to music. There have been so many moments where we have this song blasted in the kitchen and we're just dancing. And it's a simple thing, but when I really think about it, it's so beautiful and something that I know I'll look back on and be grateful that we have these memories together. So here is Lucky Star. The evening stirs as the scent of dinner lingers, and she asks for a familiar melody. Among the carousel of tunes, Lucky Star waits. A beat pulses, its glow dripping into the room like iridescent wishes. The song breathes, fills the air with silver sparkles, and soon we're all dancing under a silly sky. We twirl in dizzy joy where our hands are constellations, holding the universe between our fingers. Our feet flutter, spinning in giggles and wishes as the ceiling melts into a sea of midnight. A flicker above, our makeshift stars sway. The twinkling light bulb above our heads, the one we'll fix someday, but never soon enough. For now, it's our disco ball in the clouds. Starlight, star bright, make everything all right. And I think, beneath the weightless sky of joy, this is the dream people speak of when they make wishes upon a lucky star. The next poem I'll be reading is Secrets by the Fire on page 19. This poem is about the struggles during a period of the struggles of a parent during a period of grief. You and your partner are grieving, yet you have this beautiful child that you don't want to be affected in a negative way. And you're sort of thinking in your head of all these things that often conflict with one another because grief can be confusing as you balance heartache and joy at the same time. So here is Secrets by the Fire. Does she know our fireside secrets? See the glow casting shadows under our eyes, or the weight of our hearts wishing love's warmth would slowly melt the grief away? I hope she knows love endures. Does she see the ashes holding the remnants of the longing we've burned and released once more? I hope she can see the strength and vulnerability. Does she hear the wind chimes on the porch echoing desires we sing to the night sky? Or how we look out the window at a family tree, missing a branch? I hope she only hears how, despite it all, she would be enough. Now we have one of my favorite poems in the book, and definitely in this chapter, Wander on page 38. This poem is about seeing life through the lens of a child. When you are sad, stressed, distracted by life's challenges, if you can just stop and try and see things from a different angle, it's really so beautiful and joyful. This is Wander. We wandered where paths had no names, beneath skies that held stories yet untold, her little feet tracing trails only she could see, where time curled and folded, and we became travelers in the dream of her youth. We wandered with no map to guide us, only the pull of wonder in her eyes. She ran ahead, a wildflower in bloom, leading us deeper into the dance of leaves and lambency. Together, we gathered moments like fallen flecks of night, and even the smallest speckles became treasures in the grasp of her hand. The world felt endless in her gaze. Each step we took, a new adventure unfolding. Her fingers wrapped around ours, tugging us toward the mystery of every crooked trail. And we followed, laughing, because to wander with her was to see everything for the very first time. I love that poem. All right, the last one from chapter 1 I wanted to include is Moonlit Magic on page 41. And this poem pretty much encapsulates what the Enchanted Cottage's message is all about. And I won't do too much explaining. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. This is Moonlit Magic. The night hums with possibility, an effortless thread spilling between the trees. And if we dare to reach out, the stars themselves will scatter like pearls into our palms. Magic is not hidden in ancient books, but in the chances we take when the world softens in the ripple of our reflection, where moonbeams tell their secrets into our skin. It's there, waiting, in the crackle of dusk, in the curve of our fingertips, not bound by spells or chance, but in the silent promise we make to one another, to see the wonder in the ordinary, to feel the pulse of magic where our feet meet the earth. Magic whispers, reach for me, not with hands, but with your heart. And I watch as the moon seeps its mysteries like syrup, turning every shadow into something that glows. Magic was always here, in the dust of forgotten corners, in the stillness of moments we almost let slip away, waiting for us to look, to name it, to believe. Okay, that's chapter 1. Now we move on to chapter 2, the sunroom. This chapter is for all the lovers and romantics. I love this chapter and I loved writing it. I wanted to start off with sort of a fun poem. It's titled Honey Kiss on page 46. This poem, I wrote it because I wanted to play with the words a little bit, words that felt flirty but also romantic. So here is Honey Kissed. Every kiss you place on me feels like a drop of honey, a warm, golden, melted, ooey gooey, smoothest, sweetest kind of kiss. A honey kiss on my lips, pure and lingering, something I could savor for a lifetime. The next poem that we have is Wandering Stars on page 49. This poem is about the idea of destiny and if you believe that you were always meant to find your partner or your soulmate. Oops. Okay, Wandering Stars. I spun in a tentative fragile light, a gentle shimmer of nascent dreams. I was, perhaps, the beginning of a glow, and in my galaxy time moved in cautious steps. But when I saw him, time's turning hand halted. Was it destiny? A fated gravitational pull? Because I saw him, adrift in deep steadiness. He told me tales of his travels and described comets. Before him, did I ever actually dream? He was a fixed crave of knowledge, and he wanted to show me the universe. I always wondered what happens when two stars meet in a kismet kiss. Now I know. Space explodes into understanding. He and I, we were always meant to find one another. Now we have a poem that is very close to my heart. It's titled Table Set for Two on page 71. It's about that moment when you're with someone that you really trust and love during a really hard time, and you just kind of break down. And instead of that person rushing to make everything better, they let you cry it out. They don't judge you. They just let you be and comfort you in that moment you're in. This is Table Set for Two. I lay the table in silence, each plate a quiet offering. Exhaustion catches the air, as if the weight between us is too much to speak aloud. You sit across from me. The space is filled with what we've lost, and I can feel the stabbing of my sadness spilling over, a quiet flood I cannot contain. I try to shape a smile, but it slips like water from my lips. There's no use pretending that this ache hasn't settled in the marrow of me. But you don't ask for joy. You don't press for the brightness I've buried deep. Instead, your hand reaches steady and sure, like a lifeline cast into the dark, and I let you hold what's left of me. There is no need for words. You understand the gravity, the quiet burn that has hollowed me out. You allow me to sit here in my sorrow, to wear the heaviness like a second skin, without the need to wash it away. Here in this emptiness, you make room for my breaking, and in that quiet I find a strange kind of peace, not in healing, but in the permission to remain undone for a while longer. The next poem is titled Moss on page 75. When I was thinking of different imagery for the forest and for this book, moss was coming up a lot, and moss grows in all kinds of places, and so I couldn't help but think that this was a great metaphor for love. So here is moss. Love me slowly, patiently. Cling to the hidden parts of me, softening what life has worn rough, until I forget where I end and you begin. Love me like moss, without rush or demand. Turn the quiet spaces between us into something tender, something alive. Let your love cover me, even when I am weathered stone, even when I can't feel the sun on my skin. Let your love cover me. Grow where others would not linger. Be the tenderness I thought was beyond reach. Love me like moss, persistent, kind, always growing, always stretching. A love that needs no grand gestures, just the soft, constant presence of you. The last poem I'll be reading from the sunroom is Halcyon on page 80. This poem is another one of my favorites. I find it to be a good reminder that relationships aren't always easy. Sometimes they will be, but in my opinion, to have a long-lasting and loving relationship, it requires you to choose one another in both the good and the difficult times. And in my own personal experiencing, having gone through a tough few years, me and my husband choosing to lean on one another has only made our love stronger. Here is Halcyon. With steady hands and willing hearts, we chose peace in a world that thrives on wreckage. We chose each other when the winds urged us to drift away. In the quiet of the forest, I took your hand, and we carved calm from the chaos. With our breaths as soft as morning mist, we tethered ourselves to stillness, tracing the edges of the moment, like smoothing ripples on a placid lake, undisturbed by the world waking. We don't wait for the wilds to hush. We quiet the woods with wordless warmth, with a glance that says, we are here, together, still. You told me once that love doesn't come as a gift, but as a creation. And like today and all days, we are the makers. All right, that is chapter 2. Now we are moving on to chapter 3, the bedroom. This chapter is on intimacy and body celebration. Now, although I really love many of the poems in this chapter, we are on a stream and I'm going to keep it family friendly. So I've picked out a couple that I really love and I think represent the three different aspects in this chapter. First, I'm going to start with Velvet Touch on page 101. This poem is inspired by that person who you can just let it all go with and find a lot of comfort with. All right, here is Velvet Touch. I ease into your respite, soft and smooth, a caress that soothes the chipped surface of my armor. Like velvet, you blanket over me, and I sink into your plush protection. My worries palliate, a balmy kiss calming my aching heart. Your hand cupped my cheeks, and my eyes reposed in knowing I could finally rest. Just a little short and simple one. The next one we have is Abundant Body on page 110. This poem is a celebration of the female body, especially bodies who identify maybe more as plus size, curvy, or a full body. I wanted to write about how beautiful and magnificent these bodies are. Abundant Body. She carries the moon's fullness, curves like a silken night, swathing the sky's freckles. She is rolling hills and fertile valleys, rich with taste and glut. She is the swell of the ocean, undulating with the surf of the tides, a rise of waves one wishes to ride. She is the harvest, ripe fruit in a garden's bounty. She is the mountains, cradling the clouds in her arched peaks. She is a masterpiece, a body sculpted by the hands of Earth's lavish need for magnificence. Okay, the last poem in this chapter is titled Hinterland on page 111. I love this poem so much. It's one of my favorites from this chapter, and it is inspired by exploring new things with your partner, and I'll let you take that as you want to. Here is Hinterland. Take my hand and let us drift where the maps falter, past the edge of knowing. We'll find ourselves in that unmarked sky where night jewels pulse unseen but felt beneath the skin. There's a country beyond where your breath on my neck is the wind, where we abandon certainty, trade it for an alluring throb and creeping goosebumps. I want you in the spaces between my unknown, slipping, melting, dissolving. I want to wander with you where no paths lie, where the grasses of my dreams meet the rivers of your ache. In the hinterland of us, I want to lose the compass and feel only your fingers tracing the way. Okay, let's get out of the bedroom before we get in trouble. Now we enter chapter 4, the nursery. This chapter is about motherhood and grief, specifically grief from pregnancy loss. The first poem I'm going to be reading is A Wish That Dared to Hope on page 120. This poem is inspired by someone who is dreaming or wishing for something they really want. They are imagining what that will be like, and it's a play with words on how wishes, hopes, and miracles are all connected. A wish that dared to hope. She carries within her a wild wish. She buries it in the earth, breathes into the brushwood, and sings to the soil. What are miracles but a hope that dare to wish? Beneath her ribs a star stirs. Her belly beams with brilliance from the glistening sun. A heartbeat awakens that slumber of time, and her spirit crafts a life from dust and dreams. What are miracles but a wish that dared to hope? So I dare to hope this wish will become a miracle. I really love that poem. Okay, the next one that we're going to be reading is One Daughter on page 121. I wanted to include this poem because I find it important to share certain things that people often struggle talking about, and fertility issues is one of those things. This poem is inspired by the dreadful question of how many children do you have? And on the surface, this is a very normal question, but for someone going through fertility issues, it's like the worst thing ever. This poem is also about exploring the shame and complexity of when you have a child, but you're trying for another, and it can sometimes feel like you should just be grateful that you have at least one child. So here we go. This is One Daughter. When someone asks me how many children I have, I want to say, one on earth and a few in the sky. I want to say, my heart has loved many things it never knew. I want to just cry. I watch from afar as happiness blooms third and fifth times for so many gardens. I shamefully linger like an envious snake salivating at the beauty. I hide beneath the grass as heavy voices yell out to be grateful I even have a sliver of light. It hurts to be desirous. It's painful to be lost in wanting. Yet I swallow that sadness and simply say, I have one daughter, but we are trying. I want to follow that poem with one that comes immediately after, or a few pages after, and it's titled Fairy Wings and a Tutu on page 123. It's really special to me because it's about my daughter and how she has many times pulled me out of some dark places by just asking me to play and by creating these really magical pretend worlds. And she's just really special to me. Here is Fairy Wings and a Tutu. Through her eyes, we were not in the living room. We were in the enchanted forest, skipping with unicorns, bunnies, and squirrels. I don't know if she knew how sad I'd been, on the brink of letting darkness swallow me whole. But there was something too enticing about the request to follow her into a wooded dreamland. I don't know if she knew how badly I needed to pretend, how desperately I needed just a moment of magic. Now, this next poem was a very special request from my daughter. It's her favorite poem in the book, and so of course I had to read it. It is called A Sunless Room on page 141. A sunless room? Oh no, it will not do. The walls and our spark, drained of joy, colorless, drab, and dour. Who lost their sense of humor? We open the curtains, let the laughter spill and swirl like a babbling breeze, flick the light's paintbrush and roll around senseless. Let's be mad with giggles, slap a knee and spit out our drinks, smiles so wide that the world falls into our happy mouths. I will splatter this sunless room, pour and splash the walls with all the hues of your silly sunshine. Okay, and the next poem is on the very next page, Starlight Prayers on page 142. This poem is inspired by a conversation me and my daughter were having. It came after I had a pregnancy loss that she was aware of, and she was asking me where the baby goes, and it got very tricky trying to explain this to a 4-year-old, but I loved something that she had said. She had said that they were stars in the sky now, and that's what inspired this poem. Here is Starlight Prayers. As we lay beneath the midnight sky, my daughter asks me about prayer, her small voice blending with the yawning world. We spoke of God under a blanket of constellations, her innocent wonder illuminating the darkness like a newborn moon. She asked, "Why do people pray?" I spoke of my prayers to God, wishes, hope, and faith. We spoke of loss, heaven, angels, and saints. She imagined babies with wings flitting among the fairies, their presence warm and comforting, even though unseen. We lay there, the cool grass beneath us, midnight keeping our secrets, as she believed our unborn souls had become heavenly guardians, always near. She saw them as beings of light, playing with the stars, that they were real and always will be. Now, the last poem that we have for this chapter is Dewdrop on page 150. And if you haven't noticed, my daughter has heavily inspired a lot of the poems in this chapter, and Dewdrop is no exception. I was imagining those moments when she just gives me the biggest hug or just her genuine sweetness. And I think that we all have a little dewdrop in our lives. Here is Dewdrop. Each moment clings to my skin until I find myself soaked in my dewdrop sweetness. I gather the tiny fleeting speckles in my hands, her laughter, the grasp of my pinky, the sound of soft breathing, sparkling eyes of wonder, messy curls falling upon her face, a tilted head, and a smile drenched in sunlight. I close my eyes, let the droplets fall upon my cheeks. Every kiss, every cry, I bask in her gentle sprinkles. I drink in every last drop until the vastness of her love carries me away. Okay, now we make our way into chapter 5, the library. I really, really love this chapter, and it was so hard to choose which poems to read. This chapter focuses on friendship and self-growth, mostly in the area of accepting yourself for who you are. So I think of it as a celebration of yourself and the friendships where you can authentically be you. The first poem that I'm going to be reading is Surrender on page 157. This poem is about the idea of just letting things go and moving toward a place of acceptance. Surrender. There's a release in letting the leaves fall, like loosening the knot around a heart that was never meant to be tied. The woods have a way of remembering, as if every branch looks back at its break, each scar a story written in the bark. In the quiet surrender of autumn, the branches shed without regret, trusting the wind to carry what no longer serves them, as if loss itself could be a kind of grace. It's in this stillness I understand there's a beautiful freedom in just letting it all go. I find myself disentangled, branches bare, belonging only to the boundless sky. Next, we have a poem titled Burn on page 170. Burn is a poem about empowerment and realizing that you can't please everyone. And at the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself because the people who are meant for you will always accept that person. This is Burn. You could set every part of yourself on fire. You could smolder into embers for easiness of others. You could reduce your flame to a flicker. But even then, some will say your fire is still too bright, too wild, too free. But the sun, it never dims on behalf of closed eyes. It rises, it burns, because the world needs its fire. So let your flame roar, surge higher, for those who fear it were never meant to stand in your warmth. Okay, the next poem that we have is definitely one of my favorites from the book. It's titled Shadow Friends on page 172. This poem is dedicated to my close friends who were there for me during a very difficult time. I wasn't the best version of myself, and I didn't have a whole lot to give, but these people stood by me in the shadows. This is Shadow Friends. In the deepest folds of night, when the world's weight smothered itself across my shoulders, I will remember those who chose to stand with me in the shadows. They asked for nothing, not a word nor a tear, not a reason nor a promise. They didn't demand that I rise or shine, didn't pull me toward the light I wasn't ready to face. They simply existed, their quiet presence a balm, their silence a refuge. These were the ones who knew that in the heart of darkness, sometimes the greatest gift is the grace to be still, to simply breathe, and to feel the steady pulse of another's heart beside your own. I love that poem. Now, following kind of on that same note, I wanted to share a poem that I wrote as I imagined the type of friend that I aspire to be, the type of friendships that I really admire and that I have been lucky to experience. This poem is titled Friendship on page 185. Friendship. When the world grows dim, I'll steal a shard of moonlight and let it linger for you. Wrap wishes in wildflower hues and scatter them like seeds in the wind. I will offer you the shade of a maple and foxfire to illuminate your way back to joy's meadow. We will trace constellation in one another's skies and sing duets with the crepuscular birds until the night sways with our song. When waves rise fierce, I'll hand you my compass, chart a course through chaos, and throw the truths of our soul to dance among the storm. Let us twirl beneath rain-soaked skies, chasing the lingering dusk with lanterns carved from hope. I'll weave the flowers of your laughter into a crown, asking you to wear your smile unbroken. In this bond, there will always be a flame to kindle our dreams. Just look toward my light. The next poem that I'll be reading is titled The Wolf, and that is on page 189. I wrote this poem for someone specific, and I really love it. It's about someone who is misunderstood. A wolf is seen as this powerful, sometimes scary animal, but it is also this very loyal, protective creature. I wanted this person to know that I see all the different aspects of them, and I not only love them for who they are, but I think that they are absolutely incredible for these different aspects of themselves. So here is the wolf. You are striking. Warm pools of soil dipped in syrup swirling in your eyes, grit cutting at the jaw. You are the wolf, and wolves can sometimes be misunderstood. They are the hero and villain, slayer and slain, hunter and hunted. You tell me you often feel people only love you when they need you. But I see you for who you are, rugged and untamed, carrying the song of the moon within you. A spirit forged in Nightfire's strength. You are beautiful. Like love itself said, this world needs you. Your loyalty runs through the earth like mycelium beneath the forest floor. You are the wind between towering pines, sunlight that caresses a cheek. And when you clutch me in your embrace, I wonder, who could ever hurt something so nurturing? I see you, when you run towards the flinching darkness, clawing the unknown, only to share the light you find. You silhouette the nocturnal sky and guard the rising sun. You are the wolf, and I see you. Okay, the last poem that I'm going to be reading from chapter 5 is another favorite. It's titled Grace on page 192. It's about having grace and forgiveness for yourself during the moments when you maybe weren't your best self. There's always room for improvement, but that doesn't mean you aren't allowed to love yourself despite your flaws. Here is grace. Even as the weight of regret bends my spine, my inner light refuses to dim, holding space for the grace I've yet to give myself. With each stumble, my soul cradles me, a silent witness to my flaws, reminding me that redemption is a door I can always open. When forgiveness feels like a distant universe, my heart avows, you are still worthy of the light. My essence will not abandon me, even when I am a stranger to myself. It holds the mirror steady, reflecting the truth of who I can still become. Okay, now I want us all to take a big, deep breath before we enter Chapter 6, The Attic. It was very difficult for me to choose which poems to read from this chapter because most of them are pretty heavy. But this chapter has many of my very, very favorite poems I've ever written. And I really did not think that some of these poems would see the light of day, but I felt that if my words could even help one person feel less alone, then it was worth sharing. This chapter explores grief, depression, and isolation. The first poem I'm going to read is kind of a heavy one for me, but I wanted to share what it feels like from the perspective of someone who has just had a loss. For me, it was a pregnancy loss, but this can apply to anyone who has lost someone they love or something that was important to them. It's the moment when you have to say goodbye. This is The Womb's Tombstones on page 203. I find myself at the cemetery again, hands raw from digging in soil that doesn't want to give. The stone waits at my feet, its name not yet etched, but I know it belongs to me. The graveyard is quiet, filled with life's never lived, rows of untouched cribs where their souls sway in the air. I want to delay it, want to hold the stone in my hands a little longer, pretending it's lighter than it feels. I can keep it from the earth if I just hold on tighter. But the soil calls, the wind sighs. It's time. I kneel, my knees bruised and bloody from the soft ground, and I place the stone where it must go. Another marker in this garden of grief. Another silent scream buried in the ground's womb. The trees stand as witnesses, silent and still, paying their respects. The sky is dark, and even when the sun rises, its warmth is too distant, too indifferent, to reach the hollow I've become. I trace my fingers over the cold stone, the life that never found breath now lying beneath it. Finality entombs me like the last heartbeat pulsing into nothingness. I try to stand, but the silence still holds me, the weight of it folding into my skin. I rest my empty hands upon the piece of earth that no longer belongs to me, and I say goodbye. Okay. The next poem that I'll be reading is titled Negative on page 219. This poem is basically about how when you've experienced loss and you're grieving, you're not always going to be able to find the silver lining or think of positive things about that situation. And you can't keep feeling bad that you're just not in that space yet, or if you ever will be. So here is Negative. I didn't ask to be the cloud on this sunny day. I'm sorry, I can't find the silver lining here. A shadow lingers over me, and I'm trying to find the light. They don't know how hard I fight the rope pulling me down into the darkness. I didn't ask for my laughter to be hollowed out, to be the winter chill to all your summer smiles. I'm trying to unlock the door, but the key keeps changing, and no one tells me why. I didn't ask for this, and I can't keep apologizing for what breaks my heart. The next poem I'll be reading is titled Unbelonging on page 234. This poem is about feeling like you don't fit in anywhere and during a time when you feel really lost and really alone. Unbelonging. I often feel like a piece of sky in the ocean, a comet in daylight, a lighthouse without a shore. I often feel like I don't belong. How can anyone hear my heartbeat in this city of noise? Remember me in a land of forgetfulness. I'd like to think that people might appreciate a stray amid curated sublimity, but I seem to remain a wanderer on this journey of approval. I think I might be a dreamer lost in reality, or maybe I'm just the shiver in a room full of warmth. So I just keep drifting and hiding, like a star shining midday, unseen and so out of place. The last poem I'm going to be reading from this chapter is one of my favorites from the book, and maybe one of my favorites that I've written. It's titled Release on page 247. And I actually added this poem pretty late to the manuscript. I had written it randomly and felt like it was really a great addition, especially in this chapter. It's about finally getting to the mental space where you're ready to release your anger, your pain, and all those really hard and negative feelings. It doesn't mean that you're over it, but you're moving to a place of acceptance for the things you can't control. Here is Release. I had to release the venom, drip by drip from the sadness of my heart, burn the fraying roots of an anger that grew wild, far beyond its rightful place. At first, it was easier to be engulfed in fury than to mourn, just as wearing a disguise of contentment was easier than facing the pain. I couldn't bear the sharp sting of rejection, couldn't keep unraveling the knots of why. The ache wrapped itself around me like choking ivy, its tendrils tightening with each new breath, forcing me to reckon with the rot burrowing within me. I tried to drown it in silence, bury it beneath the weight of busy hands, but the ghosts kept slipping through my fingers, and I found myself standing among the ruins, unable to ignore the gaping hollows. What was once beautiful had twisted beyond recognition. I had to let it go. Pulling up the roots tore me apart because sometimes avidity, untamed and unpruned, can devour the earth it was meant to nurture. I had to stop. I had to watch the fire consume the vines and let the ash settle in my grief. It was only there, amidst the scorched remains, that I could see the truth. I needed to mourn the death of something that had truly belonged to me, something I loved. The pain was never the enemy. It was the clearing, the necessary cost to make way for something beautiful, something that might yet bloom beyond this pain, something I will understand in time. Okay, we now enter the last chapter, the garden. The garden explores themes of hope, healing, especially healing in nature. Now, for anyone who has been following me for a while, I do these morning coffee poems, and several of the poems in this chapter were actually inspired by those. The first poem that I'm going to read is Lady Meadow on page 258. In this poem, I was thinking about a woman of light and love and who has been sleeping. And especially because we were just in like the dark attic, but the light has come over this place and she has awakened the land. And it's this question that's posed like, are we ready to step out of that darkness? Here is Lady Meadow. In the hushed glimmer of dawn, the quiet Lady Meadow, who had been veiled in mist, reveals her forgotten face to the newborn light. When she is kissed by the marigold sunshine, dappled buds of daylilies and buttercups begin to drape the gray dormancy. The critters and flowers whisper, "She has awakened." The young Lady Meadow cups the light, washes away the stagnant slumber, She offers it to her dwellers with one query: are you ready to live? Okay. Next, we have Barefoot in the Grass on page 264. And this poem is kind of a grounding or mindfulness poem. And it's basically just about kind of being in the present moment and letting nature comfort you. Barefoot in the Grass. It's the time of day where everything is touched by the sun's golden brush, and you are earthing, feeling the ground beneath your toes. Sink into its inviting coolness. Take a deep breath. Inhale the life that is around you, because there is something about the way the sunlight strikes the trees and the leaves, or how shadows dance with the wind. The fresh scent of dew settling upon the sleepy grass, the song of a bird, the buzz of a hungry bee, the gentleness of a breeze against your skin. Dig your feet in deeper to the ground, imagining roots extending to your soles, and just let the earth comfort you. Now we have a poem titled Moon on page 271. This poem is a love letter to the moon from its stars, and it's dedicated to the people in our lives who light up our own skies, even when they feel like they aren't enough or they aren't doing enough. And this is a reminder to them that they are so special to us and we wouldn't be the same without them. Moon. Moon, do you see that without you, our night sky would lose its magic? Your glow comforts us in our darkest hours, a reminder that even in the most distant moments, we are never truly alone. You are the quiet reassurance that light will always return. You are the commanding tide that shapes the rhythm of the earth. You are a silent poet writing sonnets across the sky, read by all who look up. Though we may sparkle and shine, it's your resolve that gives us purpose, turning scattered glimmers into comforting wonder. My moon, don't you see? In your aura, we find the courage to shine brighter, to be more than just distant points of brightness. Because of you, our night has a soul. Love, your stars. The next poem I have is definitely a favorite. It's titled Magic Mushrooms on page 278. This poem is fun and it's about embracing your inner child and the joy of life. It's not about maybe the other thing that magic mushrooms can be about. Okay, magic mushrooms. In a garden where the sky wears glitter like painted moons beneath the trees, the mushrooms purr and ripen. They giggle beneath frosted ferns. I take a bite, spin the world on its side, turning thoughts into bubbles that float up, up, up. They sparkle, these little cap dancers, like a mischievous grin tucked into the soil. Each nibble a tickle in the chest, unlocking doors painted with forgotten laughter. The air feels lighter. The heart bounces like a skipping stone. I play with the joy of barefoot summers and hidden nooks, where strength isn't taught, it's experienced. Here, the child within me stretches awake, hands sticky with wonder, and healing feels like catching fireflies in a jar too small to contain all this love. Okay, we have come to the end of the reading, and the last poem I'm going to read is, in fact, the last poem of The Enchanted Cottage. Now, this poem is titled Wishes on page 290, and this was added like literally at the last minute. I mean, a day before my final print submission, and it's kind of bittersweet now because when I wrote it, I had just recently found out I was pregnant, and I was feeling so hopeful and so like this is the perfect ending to this book and this chapter in life in general. Well, unfortunately ended up losing that pregnancy. But when I read the poem now, I still feel the hope and the positive feelings that were present when I wrote it. I think it's a good reminder that no matter our struggles, life does indeed ebb and flow. And I believe there are still good things coming. So here is wishes. My body is the vessel of 1,000 hopes, strong enough to bear the weight of dreams unbreakable. Each pulse of life carries me further through mist and light until I reach the day when the yearning turns to something tangible, real. This path is marked by quiet miracles, a silent promise unfolding in the latent hours, something born from the depths of longing, a presence that fills the empty corners of the heart. My words are winged things now, taking flight towards something brighter. This is the time when all becomes understood, where doubt is swallowed by the rising sun, where I know deep within my being that the waiting was never in vain, and what I have wished for takes form beyond wishes. From across the sea of parchment and ink, a voice calls. My pages are paper stars scattered across the sky of what is now becoming a constellation of faith, guiding me forward. So there we go. That is the end of the reading. And now I want to open it up to any comments or questions that anyone has. But before that, I just want to say thank you all so, so much for listening and being here with me tonight, taking the time to support me. I appreciate it so much. And again, if you haven't already, the link to purchase the Enchanted Cottage is in the video description. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and check out some of these comments. You guys are so sweet. Oh my gosh. Oh, I love you all so much. I just read the comment. Lily is asking if she's the daughter. Yes, you are the daughter. Oh, let me see. Okay, there we go. Aw, you guys, these are such wonderful comments. Thank you so much. I love you guys too. Thank you. I will just wait to see if anyone has any questions. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the question is, I'd love to hear about your writing process, the space, what do you drink while you write, night and day, all of it. So because I am a stay-at-home mom, I tend to have to write more at night. And also in general, I'm just a night owl. So I like to write at night. And because it's nighttime, I love to drink coffee, but I cannot be drinking coffee at night. So I usually have a nice little tea, and my favorite tea is called Beauty Sleep, and it has like a mix of lavender and I forget what the other ingredient is, but it's something that turns it blue. I forget what that's called, but yeah, it's so that's usually what I'm drinking. And my writing process is sometimes I throughout the day I'll have like my phone notes open and I'll kind of write down like little like sentences or something that just kind of come up as inspiring. So I'll go back and look at those and then like build on them, if that makes sense. So next question was, what can you share about your next endeavor? So what I can share is that I am really pumped about it. And I have started to kind of work out the bits and pieces of it. I kind of knew that I wanted to do this even last year. I was already sort of thinking this was going to be the next thing. And it's going, all I'll say is dragons are involved. That's all I'll say. Okay. Did you write these in the order of the book, or were they different moments in your life or emotions? Yes, that's a good question. So the poems are all completely random. It doesn't go in any particular order. Some of the poems were written like 2 years ago, and some of them were written like, in November. So it's all pretty like scattered, but in general, it's kind of a compilation of just the last 2 years of life and sort of the spaces that me and my family were in. Yes, dragons. You guys, I'm so excited. I don't know why. It's just like it's the last couple of years have been like this resurgence of dragons in literature, and I love dragons. And so, yeah, this book I'm really excited about, and it's going to be very empowering. And yeah, how did you decide which rooms to write about? So man, I wish I can remember like the very moment that I thought about the Enchanted Cottage and like when the idea came about. But um, basically, I wanted there to be chapters, and I wanted the chapters to represent the different aspects of life. So it kind of worked itself out because, like for the hearth, for example, that's a family room, so it was easy to sort of gather all the family or the family moment poems into that chapter. And like the bedroom is about intimacy, so they kind of worked themselves out. Um, I guess the sunroom was the one chapter that I sort of bounced between back and forth because I wanted to pick a room that would represent love and romance. And when I finally settled on the sunroom, it felt perfect. Like the sunroom is this beautiful space in a home that brings in a lot of light and a lot of energy. I would love, so this was the very first reading I've ever done, and I was really nervous about it. So I think I've gotten the first one out of the way. So I would love to do more readings and more lives in the future. I think that you might be able to find me more like on TikTok doing lives if TikTok is still around. But I would love to do them here too. So yeah, I'll keep it posted. So make sure you're following me on social media. Thank you so much. Hey. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the live. Thank you guys again so much for coming and listening. I really wanted to share this book in a reading format because I love it so much, and I'm just really appreciative of you all. So, yeah, thank you so much. Oh, okay. One last question. I think there might be like a little bit of a delay on here. I'm sorry if there is. Would you ever do a workshop to teach poetry? Yes, I would love to. And, something that I have been thinking about is how to combine my background in social work as a clinical social worker and poetry, and how to combine those two things, because I know just for myself, poetry has been so healing and positive for my mental health. And I think that it could be really positive for other people too. Okay, well, thank you all so much. Sending all my love and light to you all and appreciation, and have a good evening. See you later.